The sun has left and forgotten me. It's dark, I cannot see.
Your stories don't
Why
define
does this
you, but
rainbow
how you
drown?
tell
I'm
them
gonna
will. Hi, I'm Sarah Elkins, your host and
drown
chief
out to
storymaker at Elkins
sea.
Consulting. I am so eager to get started with today's guest, Sam Nathews from the show Eat Your Feelings, which is a cooking show on YouTube designed to remind veterans that they're not alone and to help them walk through and talk through some of the feelings they're experiencing with people who get it. And I interviewed his co-host, Cory Brown, who I met through LinkedIn many years ago, and he came to my in-person, no longer virtual event many years ago. And when I talked to Cory, Sam was sick and he couldn't get on the call, so we couldn't do a three-way conversation. So I said, "Well, I want to hear Sam's perspective on how this came about and why he got involved and what were the pivotal moments in the whole project for him." So I invited Sam to come separately, and I'm so happy that I did because even in the first 30 seconds of meeting him, I knew that this was going to be an entertaining and also insightful conversation. So, Sam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me and for welcoming another redneck to join you on this show.
Well, I have to say, some of my favorite people have that Southern accent, and
Me too.
sometimes it's a little overwhelming, like in super bluegrassy country music. And then other times it's just warm and welcoming. Like my friend's grandmother had this wonderful Leesburg, Virginia Southern accent that just made me feel, even when she was saying something really insulting, it just didn't sting as much.
Yeah, there's nothing more pleasant than being insulted by a Southerner, I think.
Seriously, the
Mhm.
whole bless your heart thing, I always until I met her, I always thought of it as actually a kindness, and then I realized that, oh, that's because she thinks I'm stupid or because I did something kinda dumb. Oh, bless your heart. Oh my gosh. When my roommate told me that, and she became one of my best friends and was
Mhm.
my maid of honor at our wedding, she told
Wow.
me the truth about that "bless your heart" saying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
Anyway,
little backhanded compliment.
yes, I knew she loved me after that.
Mhm.
But
That's funny.
anyway, so as you know, I like to start the conversation. I don't call it an interview because it's really an organic conversation on this show. I like to start by asking my guests to share something about themselves that most people don't know about them. And I do that because there are so many aspects of the signals we give to ourselves and externally that may anchor us in a certain place and time, in a certain label. And that
Mhm.
could be your Southern accent. It could be referring to yourself as a redneck. It could be saying that you're a veteran. It could be me saying I'm Jewish or I'm a woman or I live in Montana or I was born in DC. Those signals often will put somebody in a frame of mind that they then anchor us to that particular label without acknowledging the complexity of who we are.
Mm.
So that's why I asked this question because it gives our listeners an opportunity to see more sides of Sam Matthews as all my guests are complicated human beings, whether I agree with them politically, what in whatever way, people are complicated. So what do you think? What can you share with us?
I don't know. I feel like I could share a few different things. One of them is that I think people would be surprised to know is that I didn't want to do this show with Corey at first.
I had coffee in my mouth just now. It almost came out my nose.
Well, and I think one of the reasons is one, uh, I I don't. This is another one that people probably wouldn't know. I am an introverted person. I think I'm an extroverted introvert. Maybe is the cop out that people use to describe themselves sometimes when they feel like I do. But I get energy from people, and I love interacting with people. But usually, people that am have a relationship with or like know very well and can be myself around when I'm around feel like I'm having to perform or entertain folks that I just met. I can do it, but it takes a lot of energy out of me. And that's sort of how I felt about this show is like, man, I'm gonna like it's like putting somebody on stage and saying, be funny and vulnerable and just shoving a mic in their face, right? And so that was one reason. The other reason was Cory, as he talked about when you spoke with him, was he had this idea for years. So when he first was talking about this, I was like, heck yeah, man, let's do it. I was a single 20 something year old in DC. I didn't have any real responsibilities other than my job. And I was like, let's go, man. Well, I forgot about it. And in the meantime, I met my wife, dated her for a while. The whole entire world flipped upside down and had a pandemic. Meanwhile, Cory's still over there chewing on this idea. We got married. My wife and I got married, not me and Cory, even though I think that would be his dream. And and my wife was pregnant with our little boy. And Cory, uh, my wife is probably 7 months pregnant at this point. He's like, hey man, no, actually he was born already. Cory brought it up and again made the idea fresh and I was like, okay, yeah, man, sure, but like I'm gonna be pretty busy soon, so let's do this. And another year went by, and my son was 6 months old, and Cory calls me up, and he's like, "All right, well, we're filming in a couple months, and here's the idea." And I was like, "You really had to wait till I had a newborn at home. I'm about to come off of paternity leave, and you want to start up a freaking YouTube show?" Um, so, but I'm glad that he did, and I'm glad that he sort of kept pushing for me to join the show because um, it has been so rewarding and fun to do, and it has given me even more of a sense of purpose, um, and feel like I'm able to give back and provide some sort of a service to others, even if it's just through the food we cook for the crew that day and the fun um videos that we'll have to share just with my kid and our family. If nobody else sees it, it still was rewarding to do that. And I've gotten to learn so much about Cory that I didn't know before. I'm not a veteran, and Cory, I knew that he was, but I had never really gotten to learn much about his time in the service or his experience and the difficulties that came along with it. And so, we've gotten to be, we were friends then. And we sort of just had like almost an immediate camaraderie just because we grew up in two little hometowns that touch each other in Alabama. And didn't meet until we were in DC. But uh I gained a brother out of this, I think. And that's been one of the most rewarding things, is the relationship that I have gotten to have with Cory and his family. So
I
anyway, that was
love
a long
that.
way of saying I didn't want to do this shit, but Cory made me, and now I'm glad that he did.
Well, there's nothing wrong with the way that you just described that, and I love that you said that for so many reasons. One is that when my husband started the band that we have been performing with about 15 years, a rock band, I did not start with the band. I said, "Nope, I'm not a rock singer. I could not pull that off. I'm a classically trained musician. There's no way." And he had this idea for a while. And I, even when he started the band, I was like, I will help you set up. I will help you with the gear. I might even, help you manage the band, but I'm not going to sing in it. And I remember when during one of their rehearsals, they had very talented musicians in this group. The lead singer and lead guitarist, my husband was playing rhythm guitar.
Mm,
He started singing a song that I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's so many great harmonies in this song. I can't just stand here in the kitchen and not go sing the backup vocals." And so I walked in and I'm kind of singing along and the Alan said, "Come up here. You got to sing those backup vocals. That sounds really good." And so I ended up joining the band. So that's the first reason I love it. It's because I had no intention of joining this band.
mm,
And another reason, a couple things popped up, a lot of things popped up as you were describing that. First was what I love about having the veteran, non-veteran tag teaming is
mhm,
that you are acknowledging that it's not just veterans that have trouble demonstrating their feelings. and exposing themselves in that way and allowing other people to hold some of that weight for them. Men in general, there are lots of women like that too, but men in general struggle with that. And I have a friend, Russell Rowland, lives in Billings, Montana, and he's just amazing. He wrote Be a Man, this book that came out about it was basically autobiography about growing up a man in small rural Montana and not being able to share what his feelings were, right? And what that looked like in the 70s.
Yeah,
So
wow.
that was the other thing that popped up. Another thing when you said even giving back, even if it's just feeding the crew, it made me wanna know, like, what was an experience where you fed the crew and you're like, "Oh, this is worth it, hands down." Whatever happens with the show, great, but being able to feed the crew and having them feel connected and nurtured in multiple ways, wanna hear about that. And then the last thing I was thinking about is timing and how you see this as being exactly the right time, even though it felt like maybe it wasn't the right time. So let's start
Yeah.
with the feeling of being able to share being male and growing up in a small town in Alabama and not being able to be emotional or whatever, and connecting that with Cory and his experience as a veteran.
Yeah, I mean, so on your first point, I don't know that I would say that I've grew up feeling like I couldn't. I was blessed to have and am blessed to have had such a strong family. I also me and my dad were the two fellas in a house full of ladies. I've got three sisters and my little brother eventually. But there was no shyness about feelings in a house with my mom and sisters. And I think my dad set a strong example along with them. But still, there are pieces, emotions can go as deep as they can go, right? I mean, there's surface level
Mhm.
stuff, and then there's the really hard hitting things. And no one is really born with a great grasp of how to deal with heavy shit like grief,
Right.
and there's no they people think that maybe there's a playbook for those sorts of things when they hit you, but there's not, right? And so that's one of the things that I couldn't have been able to have a perspective on, or a strong enough perspective on when Corey first had this idea 10 years ago or whenever it was. Um, because I hadn't really lost anybody very close to me. And in the time since then, to when we were filming, I lost my mom in 2021 after, a few days after she had a car wreck. And the journey, it never ends, right? I mean, the person's never there again. So you always have that hole in your life. You always are going to miss them. And um, being able to share that, because I remember, especially when you're in the midst of raw, sudden, super traumatic grief, um, a lot of the feelings and thoughts that come up can make you feel like this is not normal. And like, there's something wrong with with how I'm feeling right now and that sort of thing. And I had this through reading books and of course talking with my sisters who also lost their mom at the same time I did. Um is just hearing somebody say the thing that you're feeling and felt weird about, or the thing that you're feeling and didn't know how to describe it or put it into perspective. Hearing somebody say that was like a magic potion. Like you're
You're
like,
not
oh,
alone.
wave of relief of like, okay,
Mhm.
this is normal.
I'm in
There's
good
not
company.
something, yeah.
Right.
And so my being able to go on to that show and relay my experience with grief and other just day-to-day hardships, and everybody in my family has a fun little anxiety disorder as well, so talking through just like the daily anxieties of that and managing that and coping with life has been something that I think anybody can use, because like I said, there's not a playbook for that, and it can feel very disorienting when you're in it and don't know which way is up and down. Um, so that has been something that I share, and thankfully, growing up in the family that I did, I have a big family. I have my wife and her family, and having that support system was crucial
Mm.
for my um I don't want to say healing because you don't ever really heal, but my going through that journey about my
Right.
mom.
Managing it in a way that you could continue to live and be the person you need to be for your family,
Right.
particularly for your baby boy.
That's right. And like that happening while most people can relate to, trying to manage things that are happening to you while you also have a career that you're trying to keep afloat. And I had a new wife. We were expecting a little boy, and I live 1,000 miles away from my family, right? And so when that especially was sore when mom died. Uh so it's just the day-to-day stuff that people that can pile up on you, and we talk about how we've dealt with that, things that we've learned from that, things we did well and things we sucked at and wish we could do again, which were many. Um
Mhm.
so yeah, I mean that was that this has been an outlet. One for I have realized things and healed through the show as well,
Mhm.
and through knowing Corey and Tracy, who is our producer, and a lot of folks from the crew as well. Like, we've all cried together, we've all laughed together, we've all burnt the skin off the roof of our mouth together, and it's just been a really fulfilling thing because of the relationships that we've gotten out of that, and the personal growth I've seen, even from crew on the show. Some of them have taken up cooking when they didn't cook before. Some of them have, started going to therapy because of some of the things that we've talked about, and like just made it feel normal to go and talk to some who are professional to help you with, what's going on. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that answered the first part of that question
It
or not.
answered 2, actually. I mean, in terms of the timing, one of the first things you said was, I couldn't have I wouldn't have had the experience and the, ability to talk about it 10 years before. And I think about that a lot because when I first finally got, like, my first big keynote and I was doing the trainings that I wanted to be doing as my side hustle to my main job, I remember a friend walked in and she, we were talking about something with the Women's Leadership Network, an organization that I was on the board of. She came in to talk to me and I said, "Yeah, I finally got this and this is finally going. I just wish it hadn't taken me so long to find this place, the things that I'm doing now." And she said, "You're exactly where you were supposed to be. Like, you had to go through all this in order to provide this kind of environment that you need to create for people to trust and to feel like they can talk to you about these things. And you had to have all these experiences with performance and music to be able to really bring a great keynote to an audience." She's like, "You're exactly where you're supposed to be."
That's right. That's right. And to be honest, like that has now this show is part of that. Some other things that have happened, I think, recently in my life have made me realize that I need to chill when I start to worry about the timing of things,
Mhm.
because it time and time again it has shown me like you're where you're supposed to be, as you said, like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like, don't worry about that; it'll all work out. Um, so yeah, and your other question about uh feeding the crew. So
Mhm.
there were a few times. I mean, they eat everything we cook, right? I mean, somebody's got to eat it. We just filmed. There were a couple. The first season that we did, which is the 4 full episodes that are on our YouTube channel now. Uh, we did beef bourguignon. We did, which is Corey's fave. We did my dad's jambalaya. We did coq au vin, and we had a guest on who cooked his family's baked ziti recipe.
Oh, yeah.
And man, and I remember being like, baked ziti, that's kind of boring. Dude, that was incredible. He made like this full I mean, he was a real New Jersey Italiano, and he was making like his mom's Sunday sauce, and that was the best pasta I ever put in my mouth. I mean, it was incredible. But so watching the crew's reaction and seeing like, you know, you can brighten somebody's day by the dish that you're serving them, and they're like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" And you can inspire them to start cooking. Right? That was cool to see. But I think the one, and this one is actually, this is the only episode out from season 2 that has been published so far, was the Christmas special that we did. And we made my dad's gumbo, and some of them had never had gumbo before on the crew.
Ooh.
Well, we had one guy who, our director that day, was from Argentina, Nico, and he had never had gumbo before. And so that's, I mean, we're filming that in the middle of November, like mid-November, and it really felt like Christmas at the end of that show. You can see everybody on the end of that episode coming up and eating, and they're like, "Oh my god, this is so good!" And they were starving because we'd been filming all day and nobody had gotten to eat yet. Um, and uh, a couple of them went home. Well, we all packed them up, go by goodie boxes or whatever for them to take home, and they'd send us pictures like 3 days later, like, "Dude, I'm still crushing this gumbo." And so that was fun, and um, that they'd send us a few weeks later, like, "Hey, I watched the episode and cooked your gumbo for Christmas this year," and that sort of stuff. So like, that was super cool. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's just been fun to see. And like I said, Mac, who was our editor, and she is probably more familiar with the show than me and Cory, because she's watched every single second of it, even the stuff that's not out there. And she took up cooking. We gave her one of the lodge cast iron gave us a skillet, or gave us a Dutch oven to use during the show, which was super nice. And we gifted it to Mac at the end of it, and she's the one who sent us the picture of her cooking gumbo in it a few weeks later. So that was super fun. But you can see it in that episode, like it brings people together. We're all laughing and talking. We're not working right then. We're just hanging out and eating some gumbo. But food, I think, just sort of naturally, lets people let their hair down a little bit, and it provides a distraction for you to open up and not have to be sitting there, sitting down at a table across from somebody having a conversation or whatever, just hanging out. And yeah, I mean, it's been super rewarding. That's also the time in the filming where uh, you know, the crew will comment on the heavy stuff we have talked about in that day, and it'll open up things that they've gone through, and we'll talk with them about what they've gone through. And it just reiterates, like, everybody, well, actually, the tagline of our show is everybody's got to eat and everybody's got to go through shit, and that is so true. I mean, nobody gets out of here literally alive, and nobody gets out of here unscathed. um and hearing other people's struggles and how they've dealt with it has been, something that I've taken away things from, and learned um how to better deal with things that come up. And yeah, I don't know, it's just been fun to see.
Has
And
your
it's always fun
family
when you make something for somebody and they like it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was immediately remembering times in our kitchen and dining room table that we often had people at our dining room table that weren't part of our family that became part of our family.
Yeah.
And so I was immediately thinking about all that time, and also the conversations that happen when you're not looking at each other, when you're distracted by something else.
Mhm.
When our boys were little and they'd be in the back seat, they would say things they never would have said if they could see my face.
Right.
And so when things were tough in high school, I would take them on a hike because it's a single track trail and one of us is in front of the other and our back is to the other person. So it makes it far easier to have to share something that feels very vulnerable if you can't see the person's reaction. And I have to say, as a mother, it really helped me because it's hard to hide a reaction when your kid is in pain, experiencing something painful. And if they see that it's hurting you to hear it, they might just stop. Most of the time they will.
That's true.
Or if they're sharing something that is making you laugh, but they're very serious about it. Like, if they see your face, they're gonna stop if they think you're not taking it seriously. So,
Yeah.
it's really helpful. So that was the first thing that popped into my head. But the other thing was, this whole idea of the ripple effect. You know,
Mm,
Mac is making gumbo for her family, and you're sending food home for the crew and their family, and the ripple effect of they're talking to you, and you're sharing these stories of grief and humor after the filming is over. Has your family noticed a difference? Is there anything that you've talked about with your family that has been like, "Oh, yeah, I don't know if that conversation would have ever come up,"
mm,
or I say that because I know that over the last few years of my work, and particularly the recent publication of my TEDx talk on storytelling, my
mhm.
husband, like, shared my TEDx when it went live, my husband shared it with his colleagues,
Yeah.
and I'm I wasn't necessarily surprised by it, I was honored and touched, but there's, like, this shift now, even with my family, that they're like, "Oh, she really is good at this." Like, this is and they always were my greatest cheerleaders, they always believed in me often more than I believed in myself and stronger. But
Mhm.
this was definitely when they saw me on the stage, my mom and sister were in the audience in Washington, DC when I did that talk. And then, you know, a lot of my local friends already, they're like, "Oh, we already know," right? But then a lot of people, they didn't really know. They hadn't seen
Yeah.
me in that context. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you've noticed that with the people around you now that you have this public. I'm gonna back up one more time
Mhm.
and add a little to it. When, our band was particularly strong, and it was with the new keyboardist who also does vocals, backup vocals, and the new
Mhm.
drummer, and me and my husband, and then we had a different bass player, but now we have this another great bass player. But at the time, I invested in solid recording, like a good band, rock band videographer
Oh, wow.
to record a few of our songs at one of our favorite venues that's local
Mhm.
because I wanted it for posterity. I wanted our boys and eventually maybe their children, if they have any,
Mhm.
to have this like solid reminder of who their parents were in this
Yeah.
crazy rock band called Rocketeeriness in crazy costumes with me in go-go boots and vintage dresses, mini dresses, and their dad with this crazy, gorgeous orange electric reverend guitar, and, like, I just wanted to hold on to this. So, that's kind of 2 pieces to this, but what have you experienced with that when people see you in this new and or, um, it's not necessarily new and different, but it's in a different context?
Yeah. Well, first, did you say "Rocket to Uranus"?
That's the name of the band. Yep, you can look us up on YouTube,
I
Rocketeeriness
love it.
Montana,
Oh, I
and
will
there
be.
it's hilarious. We have
Imma need
so
some
much
merch.
yeah, I know. We actually have bumper stickers, they say "Astralicious" on them.
That's amazing.
I see
Um,
them across Montana, and my son saw a couple in Northern California, so that was pretty awesome.
no way, that is so cool.
Yeah.
You're a movement. No pun intended.
Mhm.
It
Man, that coffee almost came out my nose again.
Oh, man. Um, yeah, well, so like you said, right, your mom wasn't surprised, but other people maybe who didn't know you that well. My family was not. They're just like they know I'm a fool, right? And they've so it was no surprise to them. They were proud of us and they loved watching the show, or at least they tell us that they love watching the show, but they're not surprised by the crazy shit that comes out of our mouths on there because they've heard that for 40 years.
Yeah, but the audience's reaction to it, that can be surprising. Like, they're looking at you
True.
going, "Oh, yeah, that's Sam." But when they see like all these views stacking up on YouTube and the comments and like the reviews going, these guys are hilarious and man, they really changed the way I think about my feelings. Like, and then your family's going, oh, this is more than just Sam and Cory being silly and
Yeah.
the shit that's coming out of their mouths, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that definitely, well, that surprised me, I'll say,
Yeah, tell me
um,
about it.
seeing the reaction online for sure. Um, but I would say that the people who were more surprised by it or not caught off guard by it would be like my coworkers, some of my friends who I hadn't seen in a while, the friends that I met up in DC. They were like, "Dude, what? You have a YouTube? People watch it? Like what?" But I think the 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 feedback that I've gotten that is different from that and that I think means more is, thank you guys for talking about this stuff and showing that it's okay for two guys to talk about hard things and like what you're feeling and making it normal that it's okay to feel these things. You're not less of a man. Not that me and Corey are the manliest dudes, but you're not less of a guy because you told your buddy, that you're going through something hard. Like, if anything, it strengthens bonds between you and your friends to know that you've opened up with them about that sort of thing. You guys can be vulnerable with each other. Nobody's putting on airs. And I think that that's important. I think just the fact that there is content out there showing that it's normal to do that, it's okay to do that, and that everybody has those feelings. That's been the feedback that I've gotten from folks that has, I think, been the most meaningful so far.
Mhm. I love that. So, listeners, just so you know, a bunch of these links are going to be in the show notes for this podcast episode at elkinsconsulting.com on the podcast page. So, when you want to connect with Sam and Cory, watch their YouTube channel, like, share, let's blow this thing up so people really get a feel for it, particularly all across the country, but especially in those rural places where it's harder for people, where they grow up without sisters necessarily. um, I love this idea that you didn't grow up that way, and so having that combination of you and Cory, I think is just I didn't realize that you grew up in a place where you could share your feelings, and so that actually makes that even stronger, that relationship between the two of you on this show, and being able to share these things. So, if you were to have this completely new audience or additional, what would you want them to know about you, about Cory, about the show that maybe they wouldn't know if they didn't get a chance to hear it straight from you?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the for me, what I found most helpful before this show and what I hope people take away is that it's okay to not be okay, right? Like there's going to be times in our life where you're just not okay. Like there hard shit happens and it's incredibly difficult and you're not going to be yourself and you're going to feel like you're tumbling in a some big shitstorm dryer and you're being bounced around and you're just not yourself and that's okay. What we want to do is let you know that it's not always going to be that way, show you that it's not always going to be that way, and try to offer you some things that'll help you, get back to feeling more like yourself and feeling more like you're doing okay. Um, so that would be my message to folks who stumble on the show is we're going to have fun on that show. We're going to cut up. Cory and I are going to drag on each other and say stupid shit and funny stuff. But, and we're going to cook some damn good food that hopefully is done in a way that you can watch the episode and cook it yourself if you want to. But we're, we're going to talk about life. Like one of the things that I've said on some podcast we were on before was going back and watching the show. It happens that the show mimics life in a way because 1 minute we're cutting up, cooking something, literally like bent over, hyperventilating, laughing. And then a memory comes up or a topic comes up that makes one of us, you know, get really sad and cry and talk about something super deep and painful and what we did with it. And then the very next second, you know, we're laughing our asses off again. And I remember sitting in the hospital while my mom was dying in front of us, and I'm sitting there. It's my wife, you know, my oldest sister is in the room. My middle sister had a newborn and another little boy, and they couldn't come down for the hospital. And my dad, who they got divorced 20 something 30 years ago, uh, was on. And, you know, we're sitting there watching mom die. And then some thought comes into my head and I say it out loud, and we're all cackling ass laughing in this hospital room. Right. And then the next second, you know, my mom's coding and people are coming in to try and revive her. And like that, life doesn't give you warning signs before it punches you in the face or lifts you high up on the mountaintop. Like that's just how the day is sometimes. And that's how life is. And I think being able to have the emotional reserve and some tips and tricks to be able to deal with that in the way that life throws it at you is important. And so that's something from the show that I think sets it apart a little bit, is that it is nothing on there is scripted, other than the fact that we know we're gonna talk about something heavy, and we have to make it through cooking this thing that has very specific steps that you have to go through. Right.
Right,
That's
right.
about as scripted as it gets. And I think that comes through in the show, and I think that that's been one of the reasons that the people who have resonated with it find it to be watchable, because it is authentic, and I think that that's important, because that's the whole point of our message and what we're trying to do.
That is a perfect wrap up of this conversation, Sam. There's so much there, and we could probably go on for another hour, but I don't think people will listen for another hour. But that was a solid way to end it, and I hope only for the best for this show. I hope it continues for multiple seasons because I love the idea behind it. I've watched a few of the episodes and they are hilarious and yes, very touching. There are times where it helps me to see men talking about this together. I know that our two boys who are young, they're 27 and 24, they have friends like you and Cory have each other. So I'm hopeful that this other generation coming up will have those tools that maybe other generations of men haven't had. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us on, and thanks for helping our little Cory come out of his shell
Oh,
over the
my
last 2 years.
pleasure. I love that guy so much.
He's the best.
All right, listeners, now it's your turn. When has there been a moment in your life where you felt ashamed of the shift in feelings between joy, humor, and sorrow and grief? When has there been a time where you've allowed yourself to feel both at the same time? I'm here to tell you that that is normal, it's wonderful, and it's part of being human. So the next time you're grieving and you feel like you have to be low and grieving all the time, and like it's a show for other people because you're afraid of what grief looks like, don't hesitate. Talk to somebody who's been through something similar and share vulnerably in the way that only two people together experiencing this can talk. Thank you so much for joining me on Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Will. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this episode.
Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile.